Hello and welcome to the EnterpriseTalk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi everyone, and we welcome you to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika Goswami and I'm the managing editor of On Media's 6 B2B enterprise technology platforms. We have engaging conversations with global thought leaders and industry experts. And these conversations, these podcasts reach over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. So today we have with us Alex Chubay. He is a Chief Technology Officer at SoftServe. Hi Alex, great to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me. Hi.
It's a pleasure. Alex leads technology strategy and execution, creating sustainable competitive advantage through continuous technology-driven innovations at SoftServe for their market, of course. Joining SoftServe in 2001, Alex has accumulated more than 2 decades of engineering and business leadership with a solid track record of transformational experiences, which combine innovation, technology, and strategic growth and make them into winning solutions. He has held numerous leadership positions within SoftServe throughout his career, including SVP Client Success, Vice President Consulting, Vice President Delivery, and Software Development Office Director. As far as education goes, his education includes a master's degree with honors in applied mathematics from Lviv Polytechnic National University. Was that correct, Alex?
Yes, almost there.
Thank you. We would like to hear a little about SoftServe from you, what it does and what are the differentiators? How do you see yourself in the market?
Sure. So SoftServe is a top-tier provider of software engineering and digital IT services with more than, I would say, 12,000 team members spanning across 15 countries globally. We're present in all the markets across the globe, starting from North America, EMEA region, even in APAC. And we specialize in software product and solution engineering, along with cloud, big data, AI, ML, enterprise platforms, and various other emerging technologies and capabilities that in combination with each other help our clients either to create their software products or platforms or transform their businesses with holistic digital solutions. And you're right, I've been with SoftServe for 22 years, born and raised out of Ukraine, and now over the last 8 years live here in sunny Austin, Texas.
That must be quite a difference, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we'll move with the first question. SoftServe has recently done a research study. So this question is based on that. What are the software development lifecycle challenges that organizations face? And how will utilizing generative AI help businesses overcome these challenges? You have some data that you'd like to share with us. That would be really
Right. So anybody who ever built software systems knows that it's an inherently complex process. But for the purpose of this conversation, I would like to isolate and unpack 2 driving forces, 2 factors that, in my view, define the challenges in software development and try to look at them more from the economics perspective, specifically through the prism of productivity. The first factor that I would like to isolate is the growing scale of software products that we build. So as we build larger and larger systems that are more and more distributed, it becomes harder and harder for us as engineers to understand how all these pieces work together holistically. And that in turn, over time, inhibits our productivity. You may have heard of the law of diminishing returns, but I would even say that it goes even farther than that. Like the productivity over time declines. It becomes harder and harder to add new features, new functionalities as the scale grows. So that's the first factor, the inhibitory factor of productivity. The second factor that I would like to outline is the insanely rapid and accelerating rate of innovation in technology stack happening lately, specifically with advent and proliferation of cloud technologies that provide new capabilities and enable us to build even larger and more complex systems. So these new technologies usually increase productivity. That's the reason why they are invented. But at the same time, because the rate of technology innovation is so high and the rate of adoption is rather lower than the rate of creation of new technologies, it creates the skills gap among engineers, among product teams, and thus it also inhibits productivity growth. So here we are. Factor number one, growth of the scale of the system. Factor number two, growing skills gap that inhibits productivity growth despite available new technology innovations. Now the question becomes, and this is something that we were asking ourselves, what is the role of generative AI in this equation, and to what extent it may help us overcome these forces and affect productivity in a positive way? And we know that one of the key features of LLMs, large language models, is their ability to recognize and internalize deeper patterns in a text or a source code, what allows us for better automation of code generation as well as generation of other project artifacts. So, for example, engineering teams can use products like Copilot from GitHub or Code Whisperer from AWS to boost their productivity in software development projects. Not only that, other roles like QAs, business analysts, technical writers can use similar tools to the likes of ChatGPT to automate some aspects of their work. And the bottom line is that integration of such tools into the engineering and product teams improves productivity by narrowing skills gap that I talked before, and accelerating learning curves and taming complexity of the code base, right? Now at SoftServe, we went even farther. So we ask ourselves, so how can we quantify productivity gains in software development projects? Because we heard a lot of speculations when people write articles claiming 10x improvement in productivity and all these other things. So the question was, what productivity gain can we expect from a typical project with generative AI and without generative AI tools? And just to give you a sense of the scale, so we have commissioned the study internally to answer this question. We involved more than 1,000 participants and broken them down in two cohorts. One is with generative AI, another one is without generative AI. Like, you can think about it as kind of an A/B testing. We normalized for various disciplines like developers, quality assurance, business analysts. We normalized for qualifications of different participants. We normalized for the different use cases. And overall, we had like more than 100 use cases like created. And in order to minimize the other confounding factors, we kind of like added some additional normalization methods. And the result was staggering. So productivity gains like in each disciplines were kind of weighted to the share of that specific discipline in SDLC. And the study finally showed that we got 45% of output increase within the generative AI cohort, and approximately 30% of SDLC time reduction, which corresponds to this 45% increase. So those were the studies, those were the results that we have received, and it's an evidence-based result. Obviously, we have to be careful how we interpret them, because we didn't account for communication overhead that exists in teams, for some other aspects. So probably in the real world situation, it will be lower than that. But I'm sure that like with increased quality of prompting and over time, these best practices will emerge, and we're currently working on it. We will be able to retain pretty high and material impact on software development life cycles. So that's probably the largest study of which I heard that was done in this area. And I'm very excited that it was done here in this company.
That's interesting to know. I'm sure people who are listening in would also find it quite insightful. So now a little bit about generative AI. Would you call it a double-edged sword? Because industry veterans are also excited about the opportunities, and at the same time, they're concerned about the threats. So how do you think tech leaders should handle this dilemma? Generative AI can help, generative AI can help destroy.
Right. It's absolutely a double-edged sword, and what we just have to do as an industry to kind of make it sharp on one edge and make it a little bit dull on the other edge, right? So I see here two aspects. I see here social aspect. I see here security aspect, if you will. So, but first about the social aspect, I'm not very worried about social concerns like, massive unemployment that is being forecasted or predicted in the long term, because we've been there before. Over the last 200 years, we as a society migrated from being mostly agricultural society to being mostly information society, and new jobs were created in all walks of life. So I'm sure absolutely that we will have more jobs over time, as long as humans live and they have their desires unmet, moving up through the Maslow pyramid. As they evolve, we will have that problem solved. I'm not very worried about that. As for the security concern, this is much deeper concern, because we're treading here in unknown terrain, in unknown territory, and we don't know all the implications that may happen. How bad actors basically can use this technology and weaponize it against against us, right, as humans. So here, I believe that there is a clear need to have a better regulation, and to have some kind of a guardrails against malicious uses of this technology. But the goal has to be here. It's really hard question to answer, because on one hand, you don't want to stifle innovation. You want industry to innovate and to create things for good. On the other hand, you want to avoid so-called black swan events, when somebody using technology, I'm speculating right now, can analyze some nucleotide sequences and eventually come up with more perfect virus that can spread and make some damage in the broader population, right? So those kind of bad actors and those kind of black swan events are really important to avoid. And the question becomes, okay, at which tier of the stack we have to kind of apply stronger regulation? Is it at the bottom of the stack on the computer side, or it's mostly on the application side? And I don't have a clear recipe at this moment, where exactly it should be done. But what I think should be done is that this regulation should involve a body of experts in this area that could really refine it and come up with a very refined solution that, on one hand, doesn't stifle innovation, and on the other hand, gives us some assurance that this technology cannot be weaponized in a bad way.
So I was just about to jump in and ask you this question, that, what do you think the regulations should be targeted at? And you've just answered it, that, it should not stifle innovation and also make it secure. So do you think it's going to make a big impact if there are regulations and compliances in place? Because, the opportunity cost of, miscreants trying to make money of generative AI in various different ways, whether it is cybersecurity or anything else, something like what you mentioned, far outweighs the penalties they might have to pay, if there are regulations in place. Do you think they'll really help?
I think that, the goal here should be about creating some kind of asymmetries between the benefits of malicious use and the cost that the bad actor can incur as a result of that. And the more asymmetries we can create, the lower is the probability of the bad use of technology. But again, we are in a very unknown territory, and we gotta tread the water very carefully, and maybe sometimes even be too cautious, just because we don't know what are the consequences can be.
Actually, we don't even know what are the opportunities. The consequences will come later. There is so much more that we don't know, much more than what we actually know right now. So,
yes. But I have this kind of a bit of a speculative thought about this. Just like we had a lot of concerns at the very early days of the cloud about security and about other elements, we've been there before, and in the end of the day, and I really hate what I'm going to say there, but greed and envy, those kind of primal instincts won over time, and we have full adoption, right? We're on, but with the generative AI, it's a bit of a different thing, because the bad consequences, the bad actors can really weaponize those kind of things, and for that reason, we have to be very, very careful. You're absolutely right.
Right. So, we just step aside a minute from the benefits and the challenges. The entire process of adopting generative AI needs a cultural shift in any organization. How do you support the adoption to become seamless in the process? How do you see the change management panning out? There's going to be a massive job.
Right, right. But at the end of the day, I believe that the bottom line is adoption is a function of cost and value. The lower is the cost and the higher is the value, the more and the faster adoption we can expect. Now, I assume that cost will go down over time as a result of new innovations, and I think that we will have more generative AI capabilities available in prepackaged software applications that will include these capabilities. They'll be embedded in it. We already see the likes of SAP, Salesforce. They are adding these capabilities. We see that Microsoft probably is the champion. Like they were releasing Copilot like in as part of their suite of products. So the question is about the value, and since the value is rather subjective, we need to look at the specific jobs and roles, like where it can be unlocked. But one thing I think that could be really valuable to realize, like on the individual level, as humans, we think a lot in terms of analogies, right? So we need to see the analogy, how something is done, and then we can contextualize this analogy to our own world. And for that reason, I think teaching people, having like more educational process in the companies, teaching people about the benefits and showing these benefits in the real world, and teaching them how to prompt, how to properly express your intent to the system so that the system could give you the best and more precise and more refined kind of completion or answer, can be an important step to drive the adoption. It's not enough just to give the tool. At the very, very beginning, it may be also needed to give people some examples. If you are an accountant and that's your job and that's what you do, here are the things that you can do with generative AI. Just to give an example, a couple of examples. Just like we teach large language models with 1 or 2 or 3 shot learning, like we do this prompting, the same way we could do this with our own kind of organic neural networks in our heads, right? And that's how we could teach people to use the similar approach. Give them examples, let them reason by analogy, and contextualize it like to their context. That would be my answer.
Yeah. So that is in terms of awareness and training and understanding of how to use it. How would you handle the percolation of different skills through the teams when it has to be, adopted? You will definitely need upskilling for people to be able to use generative AI to its, maximum benefit. There are things which are going to be replaced. It may not mean the end of certain jobs, but it will certainly mean a large amount of upskilling that is required, right? Isn't that going to be a challenge in organizations?
I think the whole purpose of generative AI in terms of making our jobs easier is that it requires maybe less upskilling. So it allows you to kind of shorten this learning curve of the job of the skills that you need to have and the skills that you have right now. So I think we will see the benefit on that side more. The upskilling part may be like applicable in terms of, okay, so what's the best way for me to use the technology? But again, I'm not really worried about that. As long as a certain job will see the benefit of using it. Let's say if I'm a user of Power BI and I can make some prompts about like the analytical insights that I want to extract from the data, as long as I can do this easily and like without a lot of friction there, and I see the value, nobody have to ask me to be upskilled and stuff like that. I will be the first champion of using these things, and that will be a really good litmus test for the adoption of this technology, like how easy it is to use it. And I think like a lot of companies are working on it these days to make it as easy as possible.
Right. Now, So these are the theoretical discussions that we are having. Beyond all of this hype, how do enterprises really leverage generative AI for the day-to-day running of processes, for bettering processes, for if I can use a lot of words, for meeting the revenue objectives, for meeting the company goals, the business goals, and all of that? How do you leverage it best for that?
So I would say that right now, if I can use the analogy, we are in the first minute of the first episode uh, of the first season of multi-year TV series, right? So at the very, very beginning right now, most of the customers that we talk about this area, they are at the very early stages of their journey. So I see that like it hasn't yet kind of was operationalized like in a bigger setting, and I think it will happen like in a certain kind of in a certain way, right? At the first stage, what we see like people are using the most simple pattern, kind of pay and use. They are using the tools like ChatGPT to accelerate some of the workflows that they have, like especially those like that don't require they don't have some requirements in terms of sensitive data and stuff like that, right? So this is kind of the low hanging fruit, but at the same time, it's the lowest value because there is nothing specific about your company, right? The second stage of this of this journey probably will be that it will be integrated into corporate applications, and we will see integration through the APIs. So again, like it'll a little bit farther down the spectrum in terms of the value. But I think the biggest value that enterprises can adopt can extract is when they enrich generative AI models with their own corporate data that will add more specificity to the use cases in different roles, whatever roles we have, either marketing or engineering or IT. And that will allow them to extract maximum value. And probably the last point in that spectrum would be training and building your own generative AI models based on your own data. But that's the realm that is not accessible to all the companies, probably to the largest, the biggest companies. And I don't really see that as a kind of massive phenomenon. But the first three patterns probably will exist. And as we move from one to like to the third one, like when you enrich with your own data, it'll unlock more and more value. And I would say that right now most of the market is still at the very, very early stages. A lot of R&D projects are happening in these areas, and people are experimenting a lot. And the less you know, the more you have to experiment. And some of the use cases start to emerge in some of the customers that we see, that we work with. Some of them are only in the R&D stage, and that's where we are as an industry. We also see the attempts of bigger software providers, software application providers, to add these capabilities into their product suites, and that will be another vector how companies could have really quick access to these type of features. But again, like it's going to take some time to adopt and penetrate through the whole enterprise.
Yes, certainly. So, how do you help companies over deliver with generative AI? How does that work?
So first of all, we start from realization that it is an emerging domain, right, with very, very high of innovation. And when you find yourself in that type of environment, you have to bet more on research and experimentation in order to see, what are which dots, if you will, you can connect between different trends or different technologies that kind of pop up like mushrooms, like every now and then, right? So we have created a generative AI lab at SoftServe, and we can think about it like as a way to rapidly experiment and rapidly do research, combining different technologies together, and essentially use it as a conduit to channel this innovation directly to our clients, right? And if we think about, if I could like reason about what are the cohorts of clients that we meet, right? I could break them down into several groups, right? So the first cohort is a client that asks this basic question, okay, so what is generative AI and what does it mean for me, right? And here we usually come up with, kind of a discovery and design type of services for them. We help them understand, okay, so here what it is, here are the capabilities that it brings to the table, and here how you can contextualize it in your specific environment, helping clients with, understand what is the best way to identify use cases based on, viability for their business and feasibility for their technology organization. So that's, one way to look at that. And then we end up with some kind of a tangible proof of concept that shows, the value in the miniature, right? And in the end of the day, allows you to kind of generalize this, POC for other cases. Most of the clients who are in that stage, I would say they're not ready yet for generative AI. Their data governance systems are not fully ready because like generative AI is as powerful as the data you have, garbage in, garbage out type of situation we want to avoid, right? And for that reason, we even came up with our own data synthesizer to kind of help them synthesize the data that look really plausible, but not be real. But at the end of the day, it allows you to show the use case end to end, so that like customers could see, okay, what would be the experience end to end. So that's the first cohort of clients, right? So they are just starting. Then the second cohort is something like this. Now I know what it is. How can I rapidly identify areas of biggest impact in my organization using evidence-based approach? And essentially, through the rapid experimentation, create the funnel of these use cases that can be, implemented using this technology. And for that reason, we help clients to build their own corporate-wide generative AI programs, basically at the center of which we have generative AI lab, which is this kind of area where this rapid experimentation happens, and then you operationalize those use cases that's really viable and feasible from technology perspective. And the third cohort is, we haven't seen any clients from that cohort yet, but I'm just theoretically thinking that probably at some point it'll happen, that once we understand what it is, once we kind of establish the funnel, how we can absorb all these use cases, and we know how to operationalize this, how can we rapidly scale generative AI adoption in the organizations? So that, I think, as a market, we're not there yet. But at some point, we got to be ready that it will be less about the know-how and more about the velocity, about the scale, right? How we can accelerate the speed. So that's where we are right now, as a market, and what we see, right? So, but we're mostly on the early adoption phase, and eventually, as technology matures, as these know-hows will kind of turn into best practices, it'll become more about velocity than the know-how.
Right. And then, as we discussed earlier, we don't really know how far this will go. So there is so much more to do then.
Yep.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Alex. Is there something else about the report that you want to discuss with us?
Maybe not about the report, but overall, I would say that as humans, we tend to overestimate the impact of phenomenon in the short term, and usually underestimate the phenomenon in the long term. And the reason for that, because we kind of still think in a linear way. And there are some evolutionary reasons that I don't want to go deep into that area, because that's not the topic of our conversations. But I think it's important to understand that even though it may take some time to take off, the impact will be absolutely exponential. And that is what makes me excited about it.
Very interesting. That is really interesting. But thank you so much for your time, Alex. It was lovely talking to you. And I'm sure everybody who's listening in and who will, hear this conversation on our site is also going to find it very insightful and interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.